Am I up on the big screen, Tori?
You're on a small computer. You're on a
Okay.
It's Kathy, Ursula, and I here. I'll move this.
Okay, yeah, I can see you guys.
And I think we're the only ones. I don't think there's anybody else on Zoom or in the room with us today.
Oh, is Devin not there?
I don't know. I think Devin might have gone to a different group.
Oh, okay.
He's, he didn't put his stuff down and he's not in the room right now. So
Okay.
And for whatever reason, they may or may not have the class, the political capital,
we're just talking about the challenges of group members in different understanding of the assessment is what
them being
Kathy
able to develop some of this.
Okay.
Some do, some do.
When are we supposed to start our work?
Oh, right now.
Okay. I didn't know if we had a break.
No, I think we're supposed to start now.
Okay.
But Ursula's the chair, so you know she's Barbara, are you in the East Coast?
You know, like
I'm in New York right now.
wisdom in
Yeah.
life.
Freezing. It's freezing here.
Just in.
But it's a lot better than being in Los Angeles, boy.
Yeah.
To enable them, and then they'll be better.
Are you getting smoke up where you are?
We didn't yesterday. My aunt and uncle actually live in the Palisades.
They need support.
My aunt and uncle live in the Palisades, and they're waiting to hear if their home is still standing. So
Yeah.
Oh no, I know. My husband's stepmother does too. And on the map, it looks like the fire came took up to the three houses away from hers and didn't get to, but I don't know how accurate they are.
yeah, it's hard to tell.
It's just horrible. Plus, the whole place is just completely devastated, even if your house did survive.
Emails from people saying they've lost their homes up in Pasadena. Crazy.
That one is just horrible too.
They'll be on fire.
I am not on line, and Adam sent me something to work on, so I'm going to try and get that sorted.
Okay.
Cheryl, I was on there, and then did you get that email yesterday? I did. Yeah. I mean, it won't let me click on. Let me try clicking my browser.
Hi, you.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
If it is that one. Right, so that's why we might have to go back to when they adopted the standards.
Okay, there we go. Perfect.
You good?
Good, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we are in recording.
I'm going to be in the listening to the conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
Enjoy us, Aaron.
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right.
Can you see this now?
I think we have a very small group, and we also have a very short recommendation. So
No, right, thank
Is
you.
it only you in person and Croatia?
Kathy and Ursula.
Ursula.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah. We can also add a chair if you guys.
No.
Hello. How
Hi.
are you this morning? Fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready to?
I think we are ready. So let's see. We need a note taker.
I'm happy to do that. Adam sent me the slides.
Perfect.
Lori is the queen.
Add,
My hero.
helps me stay focused.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
So I think we should start by reviewing what we wrote.
Yeah, our recommendation's pretty short.
You're right. I'm not, I have this paper, but I'm not sure if I'm looking at the right thing. Am I looking at the right thing
I
here?
think so. Isn't our recommendation on?
I think we're D, but we'll be D.
Yeah,
I think we're D.
Integrated,
page 21.
yeah,
Okay.
Integrated Educator Corporation Continuum.
Yeah, I'd love to read this again.
Was that really on that one?
Yep, we're on page 20.
Okay, and so this recommendation one, this is what we came up with,
Yes.
right?
Mhm. And now, after we read it, then we can consider revising it. If we think there's
Okay.
language that doesn't quite capture what our intention.
Okay, so he just included the brainstorming ideas to kind of help us
Yeah.
figure out if we are where we want to be.
So let's take a couple minutes to read through it individually, just quietly to ourselves.
Ready to discuss it in more time.
I'm ready. I do have a clarifying question, I think, and it's kind of associated with all this. The language in our, and I asked this question because, when we talk about Continuum, we talk about how the TPEs are embedded into programs and then, of course, when we get into induction and whatnot, but on the TPA, it's supposed to be aligned with the TPEs, right?
Mhm.
Now, the program standards for in accreditation program, standard 4 and
And
5,
five.
do they specifically say TPE or do they say TPA? I can't
have them. Let me
remember.
go grab them real quick.
I can't remember. One might say TPA, one might say TPEs, depending.
The TPEs are covered typically in program standard 2.
Okay.
I think 4 and 5 are about deployment of the TPA within the, yeah, so 4 is monitoring, supporting, and assessing candidate progress toward meeting the credential requirements. Now that does mention progress toward mastering the TPEs.
Okay.
And then 5 is implementation of a teaching performance assessment.
Okay.
And that's kind of where we get into administering it, give candidate prep and support,
Right.
assessor qualifications.
Got it. Okay. I was just curious. But I mean, to me, I generally think of them as one and the same because one is supposed to assess how well they have acquired.
So this is the multiple subject.
Although all the
standard.
TPAs are not, we do have that portion of program development in terms of there are things that the TPA assesses of the TPEs and there are things that the program assesses of
That's
the
correct.
TPEs.
Right.
Because the
Not all-
That
TPAs
not
don't
all
assess
TPEs are
all
on the
TPA.
TPA. So that's where, okay,
So standard 4 speaks to the TPEs
correct,
and standard 5 speaks to the TPA.
right. Okay. Okay, awesome.
What are you thinking?
Well, I'm just thinking that when we talk about, like when we say this recommendation is necessary because at this time a continuum does not exist, which causes a breakdown in understanding the full spectrum of a teacher's development. This continuum would ensure that TPA tasks align with the expectations at the end of the preparation programs. So if not all the TPEs are covered on the TPA, and we're talking about in a preparation program, some things being assessed on, in the coursework and in the program, some
Right.
things being assessed on the
Clinical practice.
right. So I'm just wondering if that sentence captures all of what we wanted to capture in terms of saying the teacher's full spectrum of a teacher's development. And I feel like we almost have to mention let's see, TPA tasks align with the expectations at the end of their preparation programs. So I'm
But it's
wondering.
about more than the TPA.
Exactly,
It's about the
exactly,
TPEs.
exactly.
So yeah, I
You see what
hear
I'm
you.
saying?
I hear you. Because the TPA only captures a limited
Correct.
selection of the TPEs.
Correct.
So perhaps it should say, this continuum would ensure that the TPEs align with
With
the
the expectations
expectations.
at the end of their
And
preparation
maybe
program.
it should say the TPEs and TPAs.
Yeah,
But the TPEs are encompassed
encompassed
in
in
the
the TPA
TPAs.
and in the program.
So I feel like we should say TPEs.
I would
which
agree.
Obviously refers to the TPAs. as
That's what
well.
I agree. That's what I was thinking.
What are your thoughts, Tina?
I think that, I think that's an important addition. That you're saying they connect the TPEs, TPAs, and the ILP,
Yeah,
that
because
sentence? Uh-huh.
yeah, and when I think of the ILP, to me, like, well, at least when we look at the ILP that we use, it has all the TPEs on it.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah,
the TPA, a candidate's score that goes into another recommendation and all that nonsense. But I just think of, again, when I look at this particular sentence, I think it is, I didn't feel like if we just said TPA task that we're capturing all of it.
No, we're not. We're missing
Well-
all TPEs that are not assessed in the
Right.
TPAs.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed where you all are. Which sentence are you working on?
We're in that middle
This,
paragraph.
okay,
In that middle paragraph, the second sentence that picks up with this continuum would ensure that TPA tasks align with the expectations at the end of their preparation program. So I'm thinking we want to modify it to something to the effect of, this continuum would ensure that TPA tasks align with the TPE expectations that candidates must master by the end of their preparation programs.
Yeah, that could work.
although I would just, that's what the design, that's already in the design standards, and that's a part of the requirement for adoption of a TPA. So I don't know that the continuum would ensure that the TPAs are meeting the TPEs.
Well, that's what we're saying.
saying.
We're saying that it's not, in this case, either we need to remove that sentence in its entirety, or we need to indicate the comprehensive nature of the TPEs as opposed to the TPA. And I think I used the word master incorrectly there. I want to say they're at an entry level, I don't
Demonstrating proficiency.
demonstrating proficiency, I guess, on the TPEs, but is it really proficiency? Because if we're going to develop a spectrum that goes from beginning teacher through practicing educator, the TPEs really, and honestly, what level are those being assessed at? I think that's why we're asking for this continuum to be developed, is because currently we don't know what that is. So are we asking that they master them? I don't think we're asking for mastery. Are we asking for
Yeah.
proficiency?
Mhm.
Perhaps. Or are we asking for a demonstration of their entry level abilities? I don't know.
And I think, when we were looking at this, we were talking about this continuum because again, to really consider this as being a formative assessment, it needs to be part of that continuum. It cannot be a stopgap.
Right.
So, maybe I was just kind of wordsmithing. I'm thinking, well, maybe this continuum would ensure that program curriculum and task, including the TPA and all TPEs, align with the expectations at the end of their preparation program, as well as with the expectations of their induction
I like
programs.
that. I like
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Repeat it so she can write it down.
Oh, Lord, okay.
This continuum would ensure that the program curriculum and tasks, including the TPEs and TPA,
Align with the expectations at the end of their preparation programs, as well as with the expectations of their induction programs. I feel like that's a little bit more complete because I felt like when we were just saying the TPA, we weren't capturing everything
No.
because again, we were cutting out that
Mhm.
continuum
Mm-hmm,
because we have to go into induction,
mm-hmm.
right? And I don't know if I mentioned IDP, but I don't, that's a whole nother.
So do we need then in this second sentence of the whole thing, this continuum and connect the TPAs and the ILP to the skills and behavior? Like, do we want to add anything to that?
Oh, this recommendation intended to address
Sorry,
this ensuring the third one?
the second sentence in the paragraph, in the first
Oh,
paragraph.
okay.
This
This continuum would connect the TPAs and the ILP to the skills and behavior. Yeah, no, we still need that.
Do we need to add TPEs in there?
Well, okay, I mean, well, for me, when I think of the ILP, I know that means TPEs,
Mm-hmm.
but
Well, we already say TPEs through CSTPs.
Right.
And
Oh,
that's
there-
what the continuum is.
there we go.
okay.
so that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to go back to the beginning of what the purpose of the continuum is. And in my mind, it is a tool for candidates and mentors to know at the end of a program and with respect to where a candidate scored, well, let's just start. Forget the first part. With respect to where a candidate scores on a TPA, they can take that rubric level score and look directly at the continuum and say, well, what I demonstrated here in this one assessment shows that I have attained this level of practice according to this continuum. They can place, it's almost like the rubrics are aligned with the continuum. Now, maybe that's too specific, but
I also think that the development of this kind of continuum would capture this for historical purposes. Because when the induction community came out in force, it was because they did not feel, well, I'm painting this with a broad brush, but I believe that community felt like we did not understand their evolution and how they came to be. And so they were worried that we were going to drop the TPA into the induction program. And I think the development of this kind of a continuum would emphasize that continuum exists so that would avoid misunderstandings in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and because when I was thinking about that same discussion, I'm thinking in terms of the continuum in that, right now, again, our TPAs tends to be operationalized at a very formative level, and then there seems to be no connection. And so there seems to be a systemic breakdown in understanding that candidates are still on this, on a journey. Candidates are still working through these things. So again, if it's going to be a continuum, it has to be connected. And I just don't think that our system really
Does that?
yeah, I mean, we do say it, but in certain terms. But I just think that, saying it like we did in this second paragraph really emphasizes that. And again, it's a recommendation. We're not, getting into the weeds of exactly.
And I do think that we do account for that to a degree because on some tasks, they can score a 1 and still pass.
Right.
But we've never, I mean, that's obviously stated in the handbooks for passing the TPAs. But I think this continuum would allow us to be able to indicate that, which could have an impact on future practice as well.
Well, yeah, and it also, again, hopefully it'll mitigate the high stakes of it all in terms of,
And I agree with that.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's really our primary.
Right, because we want this to be developmental.
Mhm.
We don't want it to be punitive. We don't
No.
want it to be a stopgap. We want it to be developmental. I mean, at least we want to understand. I mean, obviously, there's the law of you just have to take one to get a license, but
Can I ask a clarifying question? When I see the word continuum, I'm thinking about the old CSTP continuum.
The
the-
CTP.
Yeah.
the
Continuing
CSTP.
for TP.
Mhm.
We have an
CSTP.
updated one. It just hasn't been adopted yet.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
so I'm
Because the
thinking,
CSTP
Well-
were updated, those
Yes.
were adopted, so the CTP followed.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
so that's what I'm envisioning. Is that what you all are thinking about?
Well,
And then bringing, sorry,
Sorry, Tina, you can't, this is Erin Sullivan. I'm sitting at the table.
Aaron, yep.
and then bringing that to include the TPEs as well. So like the previous CTP didn't include, I mean, they're
It includes the CSTP,
right.
which
but
is aligned to the TPEs.
Right.
So they're one and the same. They have
But it
to be
should show,
associated.
visually, we should see those TPEs in there somewhere. Even if it's the CSTPs and a little arrow that says, you know, a reminder, the TPAs are connected to the CSTPs.
Could I share my screen? Because I think we also have a different understanding of what the continuums are, because I'm
Right. I was also wondering if you were talking about a continuum of like the learning to teach continuum.
That's what I'm thinking of in terms of
yes.
continuum, the learning to teach continuum. I am not specific to any particular tool at this point. I'm thinking conceptually about the continuum of learning to teach and understanding that our system has to recognize and enable that. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not thinking specifically about a tool that's already here.
Got it.
And that would be important just to, since we already have two familiarities with the word continuum and
That's
where it
true.
lives and what that means, it would be important to really define if this is something different than what we already have.
Right. That's why I wanted to show my screen if I could, for it's just to make sure we're on the same page. Could I show?
Are you able to? No, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the old continuum of practice. And what it looks like is we have these different levels identified as emerging, exploring, applying, integrating, innovative. So there are different levels of sophistication of practice. And then the CSTPs are each placed on that continuum. So it would look like, for instance, here's the first CSTP.
And that's inclusive of the older version of the CSTPs, correct, Tina?
Yeah, this is the old version, but it was, the continuum was developed in this way to have 5 different levels of descriptors of practice at different levels of sophistication.
And so
We still
great,
have that.
that means,
Mhm.
you know, it's already exists, but we can still make this recommendation.
Yeah.
Well, no, but this is old. Now the new one, I'm going to stop and find and share my other one. The new continuum of practice, or the new CSTPs that was adopted. Let me see if I can find it here. Where is my?
I'm familiar with those. Tanya Almeida, who works for me, was on that committee.
Screen?
The new CTP isn't adopted, so we don't have that share.
Oh, when do they get adopted?
28th, the April meeting.
That's
The
why I'm saying-
CSTPs did, the continuum hasn't.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying this is.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So you know what? Then this is really confusing. So somebody at the commission sent me a link to the continuum, but it was a link to the CSTPs. It wasn't a continuum.
Oh,
That's-
oops.
Yeah,
So then I thought, oh, well, this isn't what I meant by a continuum, because the current standards have descriptors or example indicators, you know, which is great there, but that wasn't a continuum.
No.
Okay.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, so the new CSDPs were adopted in April, you said?
Mhm.
But the continuum that is associated with those has not been formally adopted.
It hasn't been published.
but that's okay,
Yeah.
because we
Well,
can
that's all
still
right.
make
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
Because
recommendation.
again, like I said, I'm not thinking
And
about
then
any
you've already
specific
got
one.
that done.
Yeah,
So-
I'm not even thinking, like I said, I'm just.
Aaron, what do you think about how the TPEs could be integrated into that continuum?
Well,
Could it be in the forward maybe where you address that?
Well, I guess I'm confused because again, the CSTP are specifically called out in the continuum, and those are the TPEs.
right?
It's very similar to the description of practice for the capsules and the capes.
Yes.
Wait, what do you mean the CSTPs are the TPEs?
Oh gosh, what is it? I think it's in legislation. The CSTP domains are aligned, especially the current ones, they are aligned to the TPEs because legislation requires that the TPEs be aligned to the CSTP. It's honestly, it's like a catch-22.
It's
So
just like the capes and the capsules.
Yes, they have to be aligned to each other. So the CSTP that drives the induction programs, it's aligned to the TPEs that are driving the preliminary program. So that continuum is there.
But it's not explicit.
Right. Perhaps it's not explicit
But
and
you
not,
can address that in the forward. In the forward, you can say that CSTPs were developed to incorporate the TPEs and there's alignment between them or something like that.
Well, I think,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I don't want to talk so much.
I just want to ask a clarifying question. My understanding is the CSTPs, we've talked about like what's appropriate for a beginning teacher and what's appropriate for a teacher who is finishing a credential program, which is maybe different from a beginning teacher, right? So the previous continuum that was in existence was really what was appropriate for a teacher, a practicing teacher throughout their career. And I'm wondering if the new continuum has what's appropriate for a teacher candidate, because I think that was part of what my recollection of our discussion a couple months ago was like, that was part of the discussion is like, what's
Right.
for a teacher candidate. And
Right.
so typically that hasn't been included in the continuum. Is it now?
Correct.
The
Yeah,
continuum, the levels now are not, I mean, we still have the level, there's still 5 levels and they begin with emerging and emerging educator, exploring, applying, integrating, and innovating are the 5 levels.
And those were the original
Right.
5.
Right.
And the idea would be that a beginning teacher, what would the expectations be for a beginning teacher? Not that they're at innovating at level 5.
Exploring, emerging.
But a teacher, would a teacher candidate
is
be
exploring and
expected?
emerging.
It varies based on their experience, right? You might have someone who's more advanced versus.
Well, the idea is what are our expectations though as a state? The TPEs, where do the TPEs? I don't think a TPE should be at the innovating level.
No, I don't think they.
I don't think they are. I think there are varying levels within each TPE. I think that you can be emerging in a TPE, you can be.
And I think that maybe that is the focus of the TPAs is what are the critical elements of proficiency that a teacher must develop to be ready to enter the field?
Right.
Are we expecting that they fully be able to, for example, with the capes and the capsules, right? I think, okay, for a preliminary candidate, they're just learning about leadership, but they're not in a role where they can impact or make a difference until they're in the induction phase, and then they are able to make that difference. So translating that to teachers, very similarly, the TPAs should be assessing those critical areas such as planning instruction, such as executing instruction that are critical to get started, but we wouldn't expect that they fully engage with parents and the entire school community yet, because they're just a beginning, they're only an emerging beginning teacher.
And I would say that this particular suggestion, the way we revised it and have it written, this recommendation, I think it is open to all of that. And I think that that's the beginning. That's the beginning of this recommendation. That is not,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear you. I hear you.
I also, Erin, could you share a little bit more about what you mean by the TPEs and CSTPs are the same? Because I see, like, I'm looking at both of them and the like categories are the same, but the elements are
Yes.
different.
So they're not, it's not a 1-for-1. It's
Okay.
at the CSTP, it's not at the level that the TPEs are pitched at.
Okay.
The TPEs are very granular, but in terms of the overall concepts, the overall sort of buckets and things like that, the TPEs and the CSTP are aligned.
Can you give me
In
an
order for-
example? Walk us through one bucket.
I'll screen share.
One bucket.
I mean, I won't walk you through it, but I'll
But
just pop it up
I
here.
do like this though, because I do think, again, the continuum, I think that is
It's needed.
absolutely needed.
Yeah,
I mean, the fact that we're having this discussion
Is-
kind of
is evidence,
evidence of it.
So CSTP one, engaging and supporting all students in learning. Are you able?
I can't read that far, but that's okay. I'm just blind.
Speed them in. There we go. Let me see if I can make it a little
Element
bit
1A.
bigger. Does that help?
CSTP, yep, engaging and supporting student, and these are the new CSTPs, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I think I just double check myself here at the top.
If it's published on our website,
Yeah,
it's the
2024.
Yeah, the new
Okay,
ones.
there we go.
Okay, great.
Okay, so engaging and supporting all students in
So-
learning. So 1A has a focus on students, and then it gives you these indicators for 1A.
And then converse.
Now, oh, okay. So yeah, so what this doesn't have yet is the
Here's the-
continuum that,
Here's the
There you
placemat for
go.
the TPEs. You can see,
Oh,
and I'm
I
sorry, I
see.
can't show Tina, but I think she probably
Yeah.
knows it. So that it's the same
same,
heading,
okay,
and it's just
got it,
pitched a little more,
gotcha.
yeah, granularly.
Okay, and so then the continuum has what would indicate that you are at the exploring, the emerging,
It's
so
meant
this
to
is-
guide teacher growth.
perfect. That's
Okay.
exactly what we're
Yes.
talking, yeah, that's it. That's
And
what I
it-
mean,
and
like,
it looks-
the continuum, that's it.
Don't say I showed you a
Oh, darn.
preview, but this is the one that we're waiting to have fully approved so we can post it.
Okay,
So you can see across the top, and then you see down here are the
perfect.
buckets. And it's not required for use, but I'll tell you, induction programs use this
And
to guide their assistants with their new teachers in their own professional growth.
And so when I'm thinking, when I talk about the concept of a continuum, to me, that needs to be started when you are in the program.
Yeah,
And it needs to follow you through your entire development as a
Yeah.
teacher.
yeah.
That's what we were trying to say here.
That's what I'm trying to say.
So I don't think we've captured the idea of following the teacher through their practice. I see
Ah.
the develop of the continuum. We're not going to split hairs right now over
No.
TPEs, TPAs. It's all in
Yeah,
there.
it's there.
We've just verified that. But I don't think that we've emphasized enough this idea that it would follow them through.
So instead of, when I say like,
Somebody on Zoom with their hand up.
go for it.
Karen?
I can't see
Yeah,
anybody.
Karen. Karen?
Hi, Karen.
I guess I can't comment because
you
I'm
right?
right. Okay, sorry. Thank you for clarifying that.
Of course, thank you.
So for the part where we say expectations of their induction programs, like instead of induction programs, or you could just add, because when I think induction program, I'm thinking to the end of the induction program, which would be when they apply for their clear credential.
Right.
Our very first sentence says CTC develop a continuum of practice from pre-service through in-service.
Yes.
Yeah.
That works.
captures
That works.
And then we have in parentheses, but we got to remove that period and move it after. In other words, TPEs through CSTPs.
Or could we just add a sentence that says this includes TPEs through CSTPs?
Sure.
And it would.
But yeah, so I like that. And so instead of, as well as with the expectations of pre-service through in-service. And everybody understanding that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes
That
sense.
makes sense.
That makes sense. And then I guess,
Well, maybe we should say the continuum should integrate TPEs.
I like that.
yeah, but
We
it,
don't,
don't we, well, I guess like the CSTPs and the TPEs, I mean, like you said, it's already in there.
And I think that's where I'm like, I think that
Oh, we covered
language is
that in the
already,
language.
it's
Yeah, that's
already
true.
in there. So
We
don't
covered
need
that
to
in the
split
first
hairs.
paragraph.
That's a committee will.
Yeah,
Flesh all
they'll
that
flesh that out.
Yeah.
They'll wordsmith it to death.
Mhm.
but I do think the second sentence, instead of include, it should be integrate. We don't want
Yeah.
continuum of
integrate.
TPEs and then another continuum of CSTPs.
Agreed. Integrate is a good term.
Do we still want this continuum would connect the TPAs and the ILP?
I think it should be could guide something really. The continuum is the guidance then for that connection.
And I like that connection. I think we
Great
should be
use.
explicit with that because I think that's part of the problem is the
Yeah.
fact that people don't understand that that's
Yeah.
supposed to happen.
That makes sense.
So I
Yeah.
would put that in there.
Yeah, I would agree.
So does this read how we want it then? The continuum would guide the connection between the TPAs and the ILP to the skills and behavior. This seems clunky. to me.
I think you could wait, hold on that last piece. Why don't we add that last piece to the second sentence instead of repeating pre-service through in-service?
So move this.
Yeah,
To here.
Are we supposed to do number 2 also or just 1? Are we supposed to do 2?
but capture the
No, just
continuum
this
should
one.
integrate,
Yeah.
capture
So we're good.
Okay.
the trajectory.
For this.
Okay.
Maybe it's just that the continuum should integrate TPEs through CSTPs. I think it's all right to be redundant at this moment. I think Ursula, as you're saying, we don't need to wordsmith to the nth degree. We just got to make sure that our point is clear.
I agree.
Do we like the successful teacher career or? It should at least be teaching.
Yeah, that's fine. That's good. Yeah, that's better.
Then I'll get rid of this part.
No, I think you can keep that because that is a purpose for the continuum. It would guide that.
Recommendations necessary. A continuum does not exist that links the TPE
That integrates.
that integrates. But the program, should we specify like a pre-service programs?
Yeah.
Going into this.
Yeah.
I like this part about how we want to ensure the TPA rubrics are aligned more closely with the continuum.
And then is there a grammatical thing in this recommendation is intended to address this ensuring, what's this?
Well, that's the sentence.
Oh.
Frame. This recommendation is intended to address this by.
Okay.
I've asked that same question several times. What is the this?
I do it often.
Okay, by ensuring that TPA rubrics are aligned more closely with the continuum. There should be a comma between continue. Yeah, thanks.
Or a semicolon or a period. But just so
Are aligned more closely with the continuum so that I think that's good. It's a little maybe could be wordsmith, but I think this conveys. What do you all think? Okay.
it'd be easier for candidates and mentors to develop growth plans within pre-service and in service. I don't know, it feels like we left off. We need something at the end. Programs or
Practice Wait, let's see what it, candidates and mentors were found within
Yeah.
pre-service and in-service
That works.
practice. Okay.
So to clarify a little bit, are we hoping that there could possibly be TPA rubrics that actually the rubric descriptors would be the same as the continuum descriptors?
I don't know, but I think probably not, because the tasks are going to be potentially specific. Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, when we think about what induction mentors use the continuum for, oftentimes it is for observing practice in a classroom and having discussions around where but induction candidates and mentors think this practice falls on the continuum.
So would then maybe the continuum also be used in a pre-service program during a observation or something like that?
Well, it sure would be helpful. I think one of our problems in teacher prep is that we have so many different tools, and we have a lot in a standard. If it was somehow closely aligned, if a rubric was very similar to a TPE, the language was similar, and it was easy to see how what you were doing met a particular place on the continuum. Right. And also, so induction mentors use the continuum. And sometimes in assessments that programs develop, formative assessments, they'll use the TPA rubrics to help understand practice.
I think to get to that level, we're kind of involved in the work of the TPA development committee. So, I mean, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
cognizant of the development of the language and the rubrics already. So, I mean, that's just my opinion.
Oh, what I missed? You were gonna add something?
She was asking, like, to what degree does the TPA rubric match the language of the TP? I was like,
I'm not saying we should determine that.
Oh.
I'm just saying I'm wondering, like,
Should it?
Oh.
But I think that's a really good question, because
The TPA, again, I mean, the way I'm conceptualizing it, the TPA is on the continuum,
right.
meaning the development of the teacher. This is part of that process. So but yeah, in terms of the rubrics on the TPA, which are very specific and granular because they have to
Right.
directly talk about what they are measuring in terms of
However,
the particular
it
task.
does raise the
But,
question when it goes back to that point that was raised earlier about wanting to see the actual assessment. Because if there is any incongruency between the language and how it was operationalized, that could be part of the problem.
Well, I can just tell you from being on that design group, when we fleshed out the language in those rubrics, that was kind of our consideration is like, okay, well, at these levels of the rubric, is the language a mismatch with what we actually wanted the candidate to be able to do?
yeah, as well as
We're very much concerned about that.
I can also see that a candidate says, hey, on this rubric, on my TPA score was a 4. Where is that on the continuum? Where do I land on the continuum? I got a 4.
See, I'm thinking that the TPA being part of that continuum of development, then yes, like maybe candidates who are scoring 4s and 5s, maybe that is more in the applying what did we say? Exploring emerging, I mean, but
Yeah,
again,
it's at the higher level,
higher level. Yeah, it's at the higher level.
integrating and innovating.
Exactly.
Although
Of a specific task, though, that may not
Yeah.
necessarily.
Exactly.
I'm not sure we have, I don't know if we have to identify that right at this moment, but
Oh,
our
no, we don't.
recommendation, no, our recommendation could be that that somebody explores a more direct alignment between rubric level scores and
Feel like that's what we're capturing in it. I don't think we have to go into the weeds on that one, Tina, because I think when we talk
think
about
we
the
are.
continuum, understanding the conceptualization
Yeah.
of a continuum, I
Yeah.
think that's
And-
part of that.
And that was my point, is I think that's the job of the TPA development team. I think that's like at the micro level. It's a little granular.
Yeah, because if we're recommending or understanding that we want this to be part of the continuum, then that kind of falls that goes into that next step of them understanding that if it's part of a continuum, we need to be consistent with the
Right.
language.
Right.
I
I
At least
think
that's
we,
the way I'm thinking about it.
I don't think it hurts to have an exploration of the relationship between the TPA rubrics and the continuum. Like,
yeah,
what is,
I don't think we're capturing that direct.
So then maybe we make a comment there. Maybe we should add a comment.
I'm nodding it.
Yeah,
Tell me what
like
you
a little
think.
asterisk.
We recommend that there is an exploration of the connection between TPA rubrics
And
and
the
a continuum.
and the continuum
of practice.
development or whatever we called it.
Yeah.
So that
So that second sentence, right?
I would just,
For the
it's not just to guide that, it's also to help candidates and mentors know where they fall on the continuum, where that particular practice that they demonstrated in the TPA falls on the continuum. Maybe you could say practice demonstrated on the TPA.
yeah. This gets back to, though, like, again, what is expected of a pre-service teacher.
right.
And is it,
Well, that's what
are
I'm,
these descriptor, like, is a 4 on an ed TPA rubric the same as integrating? I don't know.
Well,
I don't think that's for us to decide.
that's not for us to decide. And again, that's kind of what the design team goes into in terms
Right.
of making sure that the rubric is representative, or the levels on the rubric, the language in it is representative of exactly that,
Right.
what we're expecting the candidate to be able to do.
Right.
So
That sort of goes to also what I felt like was like a leading overarching question in general about the TPA, when you all first started, which was, is it formative or is
Exactly.
it summative?
Mhm.
precisely,
Because
exactly.
that then leads
Yes.
to
Yep.
how it's communicated,
Right.
how the
Yep.
information about it is shared.
And
how
I
it-
think the development of this continuum would absolutely ensure that it is formative.
Yeah, it ensures a
you
feedback
want it to
loop,
be,
a
yeah.
feedback loop, and understanding that
Yeah.
iterative. This is
Right.
this is a constant iterative process.
Right. Right.
We want to add any sort of line about that this attributes the formative nature of the assessment. I don't know.
I'm thinking.
I mean, it is
good.
focus area 1, which is on
I think we're
formative
good.
in nature, but
It is in that area.
Yeah.
Maybe that would merit a comment. Maybe at the beginning, we could say something to the effect of, in order to emphasize the formative nature of the TPAs, the RDI TPA work group recommends that the CTC develop blah, blah, blah.
we could add that. Also, like, I also see it as like, this is putting. It's like,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kathy. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's Tori, but I was saying.
Oh,
something-
Tori, sorry, go.
That's right. I was saying something like it's actually putting it into a formative place. It's not just emphasizing the formative nature, I think, because it's putting it. I don't know. What was that? Just.
Please expand.
Adam,
Also,
you buy the jazz hands,
Please
Gina.
expand on your thoughts on that, Tori. I want to hear what you were gonna say.
Like if we're developing this continuum and saying that the TPA falls in some point on this continuum, likely early, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's actually putting it in a formative spot. It's
Yeah.
not saying that,
Right.
so it like forces it to be formative in a way. I don't know if that makes
So
sense.
how can we clarify that language that we added at the beginning to
Yeah.
emphasize that?
Mhm. Sorry, Tina, go ahead.
I'm just gonna argue that we might not put that at the beginning because now it sounds like that's the whole purpose of the continuum, but it isn't the whole
Right.
purpose. It's an important purpose.
Where
Yeah.
would you suggest we put that, Tina?
Oh,
Do you think we need to put that though, or
Mm.
are we implying that when we say continuum?
That's a great point.
What do you think? I don't know.
I
mean-
I'm open to it either way.
I feel like sometimes if we get too specific, we negate what we were
Sometimes
trying to.
less is more.
Exactly.
I think we're good.
Okay.
I'm okay leaving it.
And who would like to share this out?
What do we do? Read it?
This means.
I haven't seen anyone do that in a very long time.
Tina,
Tina can't see me.
Tina, I feel
Tori immediately reached up and touched, not it.
I think at this point it's just reading it, right?
Yeah.
Tina,
Yeah.
You all are
bring it
good.
up. Was that a yes, Tina?
What? You want me to do it?
Yes.
Sure, I'll read it.
Wonderful.
I'm gonna
Don't
shrink the
all
text
jump
so
in
that's
now.
on the same slide. Okay, I'm gonna grab a.
all right. I'll do that.